Go straight to the source of the story. We have Vice Presidential Spokesperson, Attorney Barry Gutierrez. Attorney Barry, welcome to the source. Good to see you again, sir.
Good morning, Pinky. Always happy to be here.
Okay, so Pulse Asia pre-election survey showing that voting preference for BBM remained unchanged. As I mentioned a while ago, the January and February surveys of Pulse Asia, he's still at 60%. What is this telling your camp?
Well, it tells us that there's a lot of work that remains to be done. But as you mentioned earlier, what reassures us is that the Pulse Asia survey was conducted from February 18 to 23. This was before the the series of massive rallies that greeted VP Leni in various areas all over the Philippines. I mean,
and I know that
it might
you would say it started in Iloilo last February 25, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it started in Naga on the opening of the campaign. But Naga is the bailiwick of the vice president, so it's expected that the crowd there would be large. But when we had Iloilo with 40,000, we had the Bacolod with 86,000, we had Cavite with 47,000, Isabela with 10,000. Butuan with 10, and yesterday General Santos at around another 9,000. Then that's something else, and we think that the momentum of all these rallies and the enthusiasm that's greeted her everywhere she has gone has not been adequately captured in these surveys, and we expect that
DMM からお店をサポートするサービスがデビューだ。 DMM チャットブーストなら LINE で集客も宣伝も顧客対応も DMM チャットブースト
that her numbers will move dramatically after these events have been taken into account.
In the next survey. Okay, but just going back, I still want to zero in on this 60% BBM got in January and also in February. Would this mean, and is this a concern that this could possibly be a solid support? I say solid because it remained unchanged.
Well, no. If you take a look at the latest Pulse Asia survey, he got 60% in terms of vote preference. So when people were asked who will you vote for, then 60% of the respondents said Bongbong Marcos. But if you go to the more specific rider questions, for example, I heard Professor Holmes discussing this yesterday. For example, if you ask who is the least corrupt, he only gets around 41%. If you ask who is who has the biggest heart for the poor, he only gets I think about around 50%, which tells you that even among the people who indicate that they will vote for him, not all are completely sold. I mean, if only 40% think you're the least corrupt, then 20%, that's a soft vote. So we think that 60% is by no means a solid vote for him. There is still a lot of room for people changing their minds and for movement to happen. And that's really what we're banking on in the remaining 54 days of the campaign.
Let's add context to what you were saying. There were other questions, right? Or questions such as who is the most honest, who is the least corrupt, at sino yung may puso para sa mahihirap. Those three are the questions you're referring to. But I believe that in all three questions, even if BBM got 60% voting preference, yung iboboto at 60%, doon sa mga tinatawag na rider questions, he still got 40%. That's still high.
Yes, but 40% is not 60. That's what I'm saying. Your question was, is the 60% solid? Then my answer is no, it's clearly not. And the survey itself tells you that it's not a solid number.
Would 40% be solid?
I don't think so either. But it's going to be a situation where even if you give him 40%. I think that that's enough. That's low enough for the vice president to actually make up the difference.
Okay, so let's talk about the vice president's voting preference. It went down by 1 percentage point. January, it was 16. February, it was 15. Why do you think this happened? Do you have some sort of analysis? I know it's not much, but it's still 1 percentage lower.
It's statistically insignificant. The margin of error is plus or minus 2%. So anything from 14 to 18 is basically no movement. So we're not overly concerned with this. Obviously, we would prefer if it did go up a bit, but the fact that her numbers have held steady for now is good enough, considering that the survey itself did not capture the massive game-changing rallies that followed in the coming weeks.
Massive game-changing rallies. Let's go to that now. So the survey was taken February 18 to 23. And during the rallies, the other rallies that seemed or tumatakbo, especially lumabas sa Twitter. Let's begin with that. Iloilo, that happened last February 25. About 40,000
yes.
And then certainly hindi pa po ito napasok dun sa January 18 to 23 because it's happened February 25. And then as you mentioned a while ago, inisa-isa nyo na po yan. May Iloilo, may Cavite, may Bulacan, meron din pong Bacolod at over 80,000. Are you confident that in the next survey, magre-reflect na po itong numero at malaki po ang itataas ng voting preference for Vice President Leni Robredo?
Definitely. That's really the expectation, because it's not just the raw numbers. I mean, 40,000, 86,000, 47,000. These are impressive, and from reports of people on the ground, very, very rarely have we seen numbers like this for political events in any of the provinces where the vice president visited. But more than the raw numbers, it's really the excitement, the energy, the enthusiasm of the people that go to these rallies. They are not simply there standing listless, waiting for the event to end, as if it's something they need to get through with as little bother as possible. They're there, they're engaged, they're excited to be there, they're active, they want to see the vice president, they want to hear from her. So we really expect that the sequence of all these big, successful, energetic rallies will definitely move the needle by April.
And by how much would you estimate that?
Well, I really can't give a specific number. What we think it will be significant. The thing with a ground campaign, or a campaign where it's the people themselves that try to convince people within their networks, within their communities, is that it's slow burn. It's going to be a bit slower in terms of being reflected in the surveys, but definitely once it gets going, we expect that this will snowball and that her numbers will see the corresponding rise.
And because of these recent rallies on Twitter, makikita naman po that the vice president's rallies are trending on Twitter, okay? So even I see that. Here's the thing, Attorney Vic Rodriguez was saying this. Well, some of them may claim that they are winning in Twitter and Google searches. Sabi po niya, frontrunner Bongbong Marcos is winning the battle with the Filipino people. How would you respond to that?
I've got you under my skin.
Well, his claim that they're winning the battle is based on the surveys. So I'll give him that. But the survey, as we have been repeatedly talking about, is a snapshot in a given point in time. It's not a fixed thing by any means. And therefore, it can still be subject to movement, massive movement, in fact. And one thing that he cannot argue with is, I think, the massive, energetic support that has greeted the vice president in every place she has gone to over the course of the first month of the official campaign. And that definitely is going to see a change. And, to demonstrate that they are really worried about it, the attacks on the vice president have stepped up. the attempts to discredit the number of people that go there, the attempts to discredit their motivations. I think that's a clear indicator that they see what is going on. They see the snowballing of support on the ground, actual people, not simply survey respondents or internet trolls, and that has got them worried.
Hmm. Baka naman daw hakot, sir, yung mga nagpupunta sa mga rally ni VP.
Have you ever gone to any of the rallies, Pinky? You will see that's far from the case. The people are really invested. They are excited. Pag hakot, alam mo namang hakot eh. Di ba? Nakatayo lang doon, naghihintay hanggang matapos. Hindi masyadong pumapalakpak. Pero ito, pag napanood mo talaga, grabe yung energy, grabe yung investment. And a lot of people have already talked about their experiences going to rallies, how some of them had to walk, how some of them had to brave traffic, how some of them had to really set aside the day to be there. But the level of excitement is, I think, undeniable. And to try and discredit it by saying hakot is, I think, a futile effort at this point. Kitang-kitang hindi.
And some of them had to ride a motorcycle to get to the rally site?
Yeah, well, some of them did. The vice president herself did.
I was referring to her.
Yeah.
Okay, ganito po, no? This is the second time you had mentioned that have you been to the rally? Kasi pag nandun ka, makikita mo yung energy, mararamdaman mo yung tao. Hindi ka tulad sa iba na parang nakatayo lang doon, may hinihintay at walang energy. Which rallies are you referring to?
I'm referring to every rally she has actually gone to.
No, no. Sorry, sir. Let me repeat the question. Yung sinasabi
Okay.
niyo po na nakatayo lang, halos walang
okay.
energy, at parang may hinihintay lang. Which rallies are you referring to?
Well, I haven't gone to any of the other candidates' rallies, but I have seen video footage of rallies of Vic Rodriguez principal, and you can see that in some of the rallies they have held, even in places where supposedly they are ahead in terms of the survey, they have sparse crowds. The people there are kind of low energy. Seems that they're not really that invested in what's going on. And you can see the palpable difference in the enthusiasm and the energy of the people that go to a Leni Robredo rally.
Let me ask you, Attorney Barry, how important for your team would the result of the next survey be in April, which will be the March survey? Kasi dito na magre-reflect yung mga rally ni Vice President Leni Robredo.
Well, obviously, while we are confident that the numbers will soon reflect what we are seeing on the ground, we are, very, I wouldn't say apprehensive, but we will be keeping a very, very close eye on what that survey says. Because obviously, when that comes out, this will be March. That's already 2 months before the election. That gives us just a smaller window of time to make any adjustments. But as I said earlier, we are confident. We think that we are on the right track. We think that the energy of the people's campaign is really ramping up in the last few weeks remaining before we get to election day, and that's I think what will be needed to get us past the finish line in May.
But do you think that the next survey would have the Vice President have a voting preference of at least 20?
I think so. I'm pretty confident that the next survey will reflect that. Yes.
Okay. Also, I need to ask you, 54 days, I believe, if I'm counting it right.
Yes.
There's 54
It's 54.
days.
Yes.
Before election day. Do you feel, and I'm certain there are internal surveys. I think that was also mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, by Senator Franklin Durlan, but I'm going to go to that later. But is there a need, you feel, to recalibrate the messaging of Leni Robredo and Kiko Pangilinan to be able to encourage or entice or move more people to the team of Leni and Kiko?
We think that the basic messaging, Gobyernong tapat, angat buhay lahat, is working. And even in terms of the metrics that we are looking at, it has gained a lot of traction. It has actually led to a certain amount of conversion. So we're pretty happy with it. But that said, obviously, particularly in campaigns run in the age of social media, you have to do a lot of tweaking. You have to do a lot of adjustments, particularly for specific audiences. One thing that has changed in social media campaigns is you can now have specific messages for specific audiences on social media. So that's something that we do on a day-to-day basis, a week-to-week basis. And I expect that we will continue to be doing these adjustments in the remaining 54 days of the campaign.
Coming up is a unification among Bongbong Marcos's rivals. Still possible. Less than 2 months before the elections, Robredo's spokesperson, Attorney Barry Gutierrez, will still be with us after the break. Please stay tuned.
Yokoso, Hikari no Kitchenへ. TOTO no Kitchen.
COVID-19 overwhelmed the most powerful nation on the planet.
Hospitals ready.
Examining the science and pressing our leaders.
This is spreading, or it's going to spread within communities. Does that work? No, because we're ready for it.
How to move forward.
This is a war.
Feel Dr. Han, myself, and Dr. Fauci.
So if you're going to fight a war, you better start shooting at the enemy instead of at each other.
You're watching The Source on CNN Philippine Time. Pinky Webb, our guest today, Robredo spokesperson Barry Gutierrez. Sir, let's talk about endorsements first. No, is it true that the Vice President is open to a possible endorsement by President Duterte?
She said that if that happens, then she will welcome it, provided that it's not a transactional arrangement. In other words, it's not an endorsement in exchange for something else. But obviously, this is an election, and in an election, if somebody comes forward and says, "I'm going to support you," then the response is "Thank you," and then and move on.
So, if President Rodrigo Duterte endorses Vice President Leni Robredo, she will say thank you.
Yes, definitely. I mean, what would you say? The only thing that she clarified before was it cannot be a transactional thing. Hindi pwedeng kaliwaan na parang bibigay ko to kapalit ganito. But if it's an endorsement freely given, it's an endorsement given because of what she represents and who she is and the values that she actually carries, then definitely it's something that she will welcome. It's not to say that she will actively seek it or court the endorsement, but if it's given freely, then she will be thankful for it.
How about possible? Are you expecting more endorsements? Let's talk about a few that I do remember. Bulacan Governor, malinaw na po yun, Fernando.
Yeah.
Eastern Samar Governor Ben Everdone. And I believe also Northern Samar Governor Ong Chuan. And Congressman Rufus Rodriguez as well. Are you expecting more endorsements from politicians?
Well, definitely. Just this morning, I believe that Deputy Speaker and former ARMM Governor Mujib Hataman already issued his formal endorsement. So we expect that in the coming days, the number of endorsements coming from local leaders will increase. Of course, aside from politicians, we have had a lot of endorsements coming from private citizens and civil society groups. And again, we expect that this number will increase in the coming weeks going to the election.
Attorney, are unity talks still possible? Senator Drilon was saying that the internal survey shows double-digit increase for the vice president. Other candidates, he says, should think of unification. Frankly, if at all, do you think if any one of them were to support, in the end, Vice President Leni Robredo, among those you see on television, I don't know if you see them though, who do you think is the most possible candidate that could throw his support to the vice president? Because if you look at the candidates, sir, some people even on Twitter are saying parang maganda yung relationship ni Vice President at ni Senator Manny Pacquiao.
Well, I really can't be that specific and speculate as to who will join the vice president. Obviously, we are open to conversations about possible unification. We are open to that particular line moving forward. But to speculate as to who among the other candidates would be most likely, I don't think I'm in a position to do that. Definitely, she has a good relationship with Senator Pacquiao, but she has had good relationships as well with the other candidates, and I think that there are points of commonality between the vice president's positions and her platforms and other candidates remaining. So we can't really say what will happen in the remaining 54 days, but definitely a unification is still on the table in the remaining time.
But if we go back to unification talks, really, this was really the battle cry of the vice president. She didn't want to run in the beginning. She wanted unification talks. But there was a formula that Senator Ping Lacson had proposed, to which the vice president rejected, hindi ho ba? Yung proposal ho kaya ni Senator Ping Lacson, should that be considered now by the candidates?
Well, that's really up to the candidates. The formula is simply, let's back the leading contender among us. Yes, that's the formula. Well, if Senator Lacson is still willing to do that, after all, he was the one who proposed it. Then that's really up to him. We certainly won't insist on it. The vice president's refusal to actually agree to that formula early on was anchored on her commitment that once I file, I will fight it out to the end, regardless of my number. So I don't know what the thinking is with respect to the other candidates. Some of them might feel that abandoning their candidacy might be turning their back on some of their supporters. So we cannot obviously take that away from them. But if they are open to pursuing a unification, then that's something that we are certainly open to.
Attorney Barry Gutierrez, sir, thank you so much for your time.
Anytime, Pinky. Always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, sir. And up next, a former anti-communist official calls for a revolutionary government under President Rodrigo Duterte. Armed Forces spokesperson Colonel Demi Zagala shares his thoughts when we return. Please stay tuned.
法人なり個人事業の会社化の話です。支援体制はしっかりしています。
Cigarette smoking is one of the leading causes of pulmonary and cardiovascular diseases globally.
7,000 chemicals per puff. It's not even if you just finish the whole stick. And all these chemicals are not good.
2 hours in, you'll already have the cravings. 8 hours in, you'll start coughing, which will get more pronounced the one day after you quit.
On Med Talk Health Talk, we'll dive deep into the question of, is there really a less harmful alternative to cigarette smoking?
Today, we're going to be taking this marvel of engineering and taking it for a special ride as we meet somebody who definitely knows his
You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Pinky Webb. Our guest today, AFP spokesperson, Colonel Demi Zagala. Colonel Zagala, welcome to The Source. Let me already start my questioning. Si General Parlade, he trooped with some supporters to the People Power Monument yesterday morning to denounce what he calls alleged corruption in COMELEC, no? And that it needs to be overhauled. And then he went on to say that, he said a revolutionary government is not the solution. But if it reaches the point of putting up one, so be it. Naglabas ho kayo ng pahayag hinggil dito, and tell us more about that and why the statement from the AFP coming from the spokesperson. You said is firm in its resolve to be loyal to the Constitution and the duly constituted authorities.
Yes, Pinky, thank you and good morning to everyone. Our Chief of Staff, General Andres C. Centino, wants to make it clear that we will have two important duties for this year. The first one is our election duty, and the second one is to finish the CPP, NPA, NDF forces. So when General Parlade came out, we don't want, because he is a former soldier, we don't want people to think that his statement it carries to all active members of the armed forces of the Philippines. So we made it clear that we will be loyal to the Constitution and the duly constituted authorities, that we will stand behind the chain of command. So we want that out of the way so that there will be no insinuation that there will be any support by the armed forces to any action that is not aligned to our Constitution and that will not be able to support our electoral process. Again, we respect people's freedom of expression. Right now, General Parlade is already free. He is already retired and civilian. He's a civilian and he's really free to say what he wants, and we respect that. But again, to our soldiers, airmen, sailors, and marines, we have a duty, and that as members of the armed forces, our freedom is limited to suffrage. No? So it's a reminder that we follow the chain of command.
But Colonel, you're saying that, as we all know, retired na po si General Parlade, and you respect his right to express, to have his freedom of expression, under of course, karapatan po niya yon. But
yes,
yung mga statements na ganon, would that some sort kind of have some influence, or could it encourage some members of the military?
First is, let's get back to some basic reminders. No? Back in 1988, there was the Supreme Court gave GR number 83177, no? Which states that the peculiarity of military service requires us to be circumspect. As members of the profession of arms, there are imposed limitations, no, in the validity of our actions. So the Supreme Court set distinct parameters on certain civil liberties of person in the military service. So, short in saying, we follow. No, part of the fundamentals of military discipline, and to avert the country from going into a crisis, we must follow. So, yung personal, aming personal feelings or our
conviction,
opinions,
beliefs
should not matter. Should not matter. Who we support privately, who we want to vote for, does not matter when it comes to our duty. Although we can express that only when we vote. So that is very clear. So we remain
basically, yeah.
夫婦で行く京都は2人きりの時間が目的だ。3回目の結婚記念日。今日私たちが泊まるのはザ・ロイヤルパークホテルアイコニック。
As a last question, sir, I've run out of time. I'm sorry about that. But it's really just a reminder to the active members of the military to stay apolitical.
Non-partisan.
Non-partisan.
Okay, so it is our responsibility to uphold the integrity, as we execute our duty of to serve the nation. So we cannot afford at this moment to be seen as anyone that is engaged, as an organization engaging in partisan politics. We want to avoid that. We will do our duty. We will do our duty so that the elections will push through.
Okay, AFP spokesperson, Demi Zagala, sir, good to speak to you again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Pinky, and good morning.
And thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN.